We're kicking off 2026 by taking a look at a toy show that happened in 2025. Delaware's a good time. Whoa. Welcome to Pegwarmers. I'm Kevin, and I'm here to talk about toys. Today, we are talking about the Octoberfest Toy Show that took place on October 5th, 2025. I know this stuff's been sitting around a little while. I haven't really talked about it. Sometimes the way episodes come out, especially if toy shows are back-to-back-to-back, sometimes I don't get to report on it immediately, and then it backs up to like another show, because I try to spread these out, and I try to do timely things, so like if a new wave of Reaction Plus or the new mask stuff comes out, right, I try to get videos on those things out relatively quickly, and it pushes off some of the toy show stuff. So we're talking about the Octoberfest Toy Show in Delaware at the Nershrine Temple. This is a show that, you know, my friends in my collecting circle, we just refer to it as the Delaware Show. Happens twice a year, in April and in October. Both shows have a name. This year was actually the 25th anniversary of the Octoberfest Toy Show. They gave out wooden nickels, which I thought was such a funny thing. Wooden nickels were a thing when I was a kid. I don't really remember why or how we got them, but I remember having several of them from somewhat monumentous events, going to landmarks and things like that. So I thought it was pretty funny they were handing these out, so I definitely had to grab one. So, wooden nickel. You don't see those every day. 25 years. The people that organized this show also run the Winter Fever Toy Show, which is coming up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. That's going to be on January 31st, 2026. So that's coming up at the end of this month. If you're local, I highly recommend you check it out. I'm sure I will be there as well. Winter Fever show, parking can be a little bit more of an issue there. That show is very close to where NJCC takes place. It's actually very close to that hotel. It's in an armory. And it was a good show. I went, I think, for the first time ever last year, but I enjoyed it. The next Delaware show at the Nershrine Temple will be the April Fool's show on April 26th, 2026. So that was a little bit further off. So I traveled to Delaware with my buddy Nick. He and I have been going to toy shows together for years. He took a little bit of a pause on going to a lot of the toy shows for a little bit there, but it was exciting to get to hang out with him again. We drove down together past Philly, you know, and winding down the highway. Got to the Nershrine Temple. This is a Shriners building. They have like a banquet hall with a stage, and then there's like another smaller room off the side. So there's two rooms at this show, one small room, one large room. It's bigger than NJCC, probably bigger than like when I compare stuff to like a firehouse show or a hotel conference room show, because it has that second room. And really the stage room is pretty big, and with them having vendors up on the stage, it's a pretty good layout, a pretty decent amount of vendors, and a nice mix of stuff. I like going to the Delaware shows because while there are some vendors there that I see all the time, you know, my friends that are kind of from the Jersey toy crowd, there's also some vendors there that I don't see often. One of the first things that caught my eye was a set of McFarlane Spawn figures. This was some sort of promotional pack or bonus pack. I remember in the early 2000s at some point getting, I think, Star Wars Episode 2 figures in like a special value pack, and they had a bunch of figures in like a cardboard sleeve. They were regularly packaged, but then additional packaging was put around them. I remember seeing those, so this was the first time I've seen this Spawn set. So it's this white card that goes over the card backs, but still has cutouts for their bubbles. It says McFarlane Toys, from America's #1 comic book, Spawn. So what a weird pack. I don't know what the history is. If anybody is a huge Spawn collector and knows how these were sold or why they were packaged this way, let me know. But it's funny, the white thing's just stapled right on. One of my first purchases of the day was a 2-bad shield for Vintage Masters of the Universe. I have been working on trying to kind of straighten up my Motu collection. It's got some rough areas to it, I do have to admit. For as much as I love Masters of the Universe, I sold all of my childhood Masters of the Universe when I was a kid. When I focused just on G.I. Joe and Kenner Star Wars. and maybe even very early on in that, maybe even before I got into Star Wars. I dumped He-Man and Thundercats at a pretty young age, and, then I bought them all back, and some of my He-Man stuff's in rough shape. I bought a collection on eBay years ago, and then built from there, and so I keep, when I look through it, every time I look through it, kind of I notice, this guy's missing something, or this guy's in rough shape, and so I've been trying to kind of work on that, as well as trying to complete the accessories for my vintage Joes, and so I needed a 2-bad shield, so happy to pick that up. It was relatively inexpensive. Another thing that's caught my eye was a vintage Darth Vader case. Those are very common, right? You expect it to be full of Kenner Star Wars figures, with maybe a couple Power of the Force 2 guys shoved in there also, but this case was full of Star Wars Bend-ems. Bend-ems. You don't see big collections of them very often, but it just seemed extra funny to see them all shoved in a Darth Vader case like that. Did you guys have any of the Bend-ems? They're from the dark times. They're one of the first toys we got leading into the Micro Machines and then the Power of the Force 2 figures. I had a few of them. They weren't great, but I did play with them. I kind of liked the Darth Vader one because he had a pretty awesome cape. And I used the R2-D2 one for years. He was just the right height to balance a video camera I used to have. If I set it on the floor, the screen would make it tip over, and he was just the right height to slide under the screen. And so when I used my camera without a tripod to do stop motion of toys on the floor, he helped support the camera every time. He was my tripod for that. I picked up a Gyro Viper. This is the pilot to the Cobra Mamba. I had the Mamba as a kid. It's not my favorite. It's a little clunky, it's a little awkward to play with, but I love helicopters, and especially as a kid loved helicopters. So the Mamba was a big part of my collection. And this guy has his helmet's in good shape. His nose is in good shape, because that nose paint rubs off when you put these helmets on. I always thought his helmet looked like Luke's helmet with the blast shield down from the Millennium Falcon scene. I think I have 3 Gyro Vipers already, like one for every position on the Mamba, the main pilot in the center, and then the 2 pods, which I kind of think is cool when you can deck out a vehicle in all its specific drivers, like having 2 Strato Vipers in the Night Raven, or having 4 Motor Vipers in a stun. I think that obsession came from watching G.I. Joe the movie as a kid, where they had stun being driven by 4 Motor Vipers. There is maybe a little bit of marker on the back of this guy's waist that I didn't notice when I bought him, but otherwise he's in pretty good shape, and I might be able to get that off. But he was a fairly decent price, and it's hard to walk by Cobra Army Builders. I was very tempted by some Mars Attacks figures. They are pretty cool looking. They look like they're really well done. I felt like this could be a really great topic for an episode with Tony and Ryan. Do a Hack the Movies movie toy review. But I didn't think they had the full lineup there, and so to sink money into the line and still need to get a bunch of figures, I just figured it was going to be hard to finish that line, and so I didn't jump at it. Then a couple weeks later, Ryan texted a picture of some on Marketplace, I think, that he was looking at. I was looking at that line as well. So sometimes we do collab on trying to get enough stuff to do an episode, but I didn't pull the trigger. More accessories that I dug out of a bin at the show. I got this brownish camera that has shoulder clips to it. This goes to an Adventure People set, a TV camera crew. And this video camera, which looks a little bit like you'd think it came with an April O'Neil, actually goes to a Darkwing Duck figure. I drool over really cool box stuff at toy shows, and at the Delaware show, I saw a boxed Roton and a boxed Road Ripper, and they looked fantastic. And the same vendor had a boxed Return of the Jedi AT-AT, and I have an AT-AT missing like all its stuff, but it's definitely the Kenner vehicle that I think I want the most out of the ones I don't have, because the AT-AT is so cool. My buddy Derek growing up, my best friend that I played with toys with a lot, he had an AT-AT, again, missing a lot of stuff. It did have the side door and at least one of the seats for the AT-AT drivers to kind of sit in. They're almost like a backpack that fits on them. He might have been missing everything else. Like, I don't think he had the battery cover, so there was like a pit inside the vehicle. It didn't have the chin guns. It had the side guns. Yeah, so he had that, and we played with it like crazy, even though it wasn't complete. And I have one, actually, that Tony from Hack the Movies got me at a yard sale in Levittown years ago. And I think that might have the side guns, but no side door. It's pretty bare bones, and it doesn't quite fill the hole in my collection the way I would like it to. You guys know I love the G.I. Joe merch and the oddities. This is a Light Bright picture refill kit, and there were stickers on the front of it. It said 33 sheets in all, only 9 are G.I. Joe. And the back shows that there are 12 images of the Cobra Asp, the Warrant Officer Flint, Ripper, Cobra Elite Trooper, a.k.a. the Crimson Guard, the Slugger, the Hovercraft, the USS Flag Aircraft Carrier, Torch, Quick Kick, Sailor Shipwreck, Dreadnought Buzzer, and Ninja, who I guess is Storm Shadow. I have this envelope for sure, but I don't know if it's a complete set. And I looked at this. The guy who was selling it kind of mumbled about, well, what do you want to pay for it at me? And he goes, you want to pay half? Whatever the price was on it. And at half, I was like, yeah, I'll take it. Because there might be some sheets in here I need to complete my set, because I don't know for sure if my set's complete. I know the other one I have of this, the same set with Quick Kick, because there are, I think, 2 Light Bright sets. The previous set I have, Rose and Tony from RetroCon picked up for me at Blobfest in Phoenixville one time. But like I said, I don't know if it's complete. So, this is the first time I'm looking in here. I've had this since October, but I did not look in. This is just refill sheets, plain just the dots. One time, my friends and I did a stop-motion animation, and we tried to do Pac-Man in stop-motion animation on a Light Bright, and we did it backwards. So we animated it from the end back to the beginning, so that way the dots would appear. Like, it would look like he was eating them, and the dots would go out. It was really hard because we didn't have the paper. We just used black construction paper, and then you don't really know quite where the grid is because the dots are in sort of a weird pattern. It was really hard to do. All right, so there's some blank sheets there. Oh, that's another blank sheet. Okay, who do we have here? This is Dreadnought Buzzer. Oh, they're like stitched together like old dot matrix paper. So we've got Buzzer, we've got Torch, which does not say Dreadnought Torch. We've got the Asp, we've got the Slugger, we've got Ninja, Warrant Officer Flint, G.I. Joe Seal. Oh, yeah, I think the back of the package said it was the Hovercraft, but I couldn't quite figure out how it was a hovercraft. Sailor Shipwreck, USS Flag Aircraft Carrier, and some more blank refill sheets. So yeah, I don't really need these blank refill sheets. These might be something that I part with, or maybe there's one single one here. Maybe I'll hang on to that one just for fun. But these sheets, I don't really see a use for. Just sort of verifying there isn't anything else G.I. Joe tucked in the middle of any of these. Saw some pretty rare G.I. Joes carded from the end of the line. The Brown Ozone figure. This was a Eco Warriors guy who got repainted a couple times during Star Brigade. That brown release is pretty hard to come by. And Effects, who was one of the unique characters from '94. Always cool to see those guys in a package. Also saw this awesome Power Rangers racing set. So you've got the Red Ranger on his motorcycle, which were played up a lot in the American toys, but were not in the show at all. The Rangers did use them in the Japanese Sentai show, but they were completely cut basically from the American show. I think they might show up in the background of one shot, but you never see them riding them. But they got merchandised a lot as toys. So you get the Red Ranger on his motorcycle to race around, and then King Sphinx, who's just sort of sitting on a block on wheels. And this is one of those things I mention a lot when I think back to '93 and the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. They merchandise King Sphinx like crazy, despite him not being a main guy. Like, Goldar is a monster that appears in the series over and over and over again. King Sphinx shows up for one episode, an early episode, I guess maybe the second episode. They fight Mighty Minotaur in the first one, and then King Sphinx, I think, maybe in the second one. But he, I guess, just had the right look. They merchandised the heck out of him, with him getting an 8-inch jumbo figure. He got used in one of the board games. He got used in the racing set. He really was a popular monster from that series for a Monster of the Day. I saw some Street Fighter 2 watches, so the wristwatch has a little character on it there. Ken, Guile, E Honda, and Ryu. Those were pretty cool. I had some Ninja Turtle watches as a kid. I had Michelangelo that I wore and kind of beat up, and then I had a Donatello one later that I used much more gently. My buddy Nick picked up a bunch of Super 7 Ultimate Ninja Turtles for a really good price. Nick's been collecting vintage turtles lately, but the Ultimate Turtle stuff from Super 7 look really great, and if you can get them for less than what retail was, they're pretty neat. I've been on a quest to complete my vintage G.I. Joe collection with the accessories and things like that. One of my favorite Star Brigade figures is the Star Brigade Roadblock in this red, white, and blue outfit. It's actually a repaint of a General Hawk uniform when he came with a jetpack, but they put a Roadblock head underneath the dome helmet there. I really feel like they should have released a whole bunch of the popular characters in this spacesuit. I think the spacesuit is awesome looking. Feels very G.I. Joe, very patriotic. And I think they could have done Duke, and I think they could have done Snake Eyes, and I think they could have done Scarlet and Flint, and whoever else they wanted to inside this with the bubble dome on it. I think that would have been fun. I know that they probably would have decided that people wouldn't buy multiple characters looking the same, but I do think this is the best body they used for all of Star Brigade. They also repainted this one in orange, but I have been in need of some of his gold accessories, and this guy was complete with all of his accessories still on the sprue, as well as a pamphlet, as well as his file card cut off the back of the package, and his missile launcher. And for the price they were asking, it just seemed like a no-brainer. Let's get all of his remaining accessories. I think I needed both of his missiles and his machete. Or maybe I picked up his machete at RetroCon. I don't know, but I needed at least 2 of his accessories. And the hunt for these stuff is kind of a pain. You find a lot of midline, the mid-80s weapons, the 86 through 88, 89, maybe even in 90 stuff. But the tail end, the Star Brigade weapons, are kind of a pain to find because they came with so many and they're so generic looking. I just felt like this was the way to go. Oh, here's an oldie but a goodie. Before Beyblades or even Spinjas, right? The first Battling Top game, 1968. One of the vendors had a really nice display of Kenner Star Wars figures. They had that stand for the original 12 with the stickers on it and really pristine looking figures. They also had a boxed Conquest that looked really nice. Obviously all pretty expensive. The next one, I saw this Gumby costume and I decided to check to see if it was a Collegeville costume or what brand it was. And it turns out it's Spooktown. It's a little poor choice there. Another vendor had some pretty amazing trading cards, including Supergirl, Donkey Kong, and Nintendo game packs. The giant G.I. Joe logo on this case caught my eye. There is a G.I. Joe toolkit. There's a Saboteur toolkit, and also I think a medical kit. They were kind of role-play toys made by other companies that licensed the G.I. Joe brand. This one would have come with a toy plastic hammer and square and a few other tools. And this says 1985 on the inside. The sticker is not in great shape. It is definitely curled up, like the Real American Hero part is curled up there. But it does have both catches on it. The one's a little bit stressed, but it was $1, and I don't have it in my collection, so I couldn't pass it up. I would like to get a complete set with the tools someday, but for now, I've got the case. Other really awesome toys that I saw mint on card there included Weird Balls, Earthworm Jim, and a bunch of great G.I. Joe figures. It's always fun to find weird knockoff toys at these kind of toy shows, and this knockoff high-tech vehicle, which clearly looks like the DeLorean from Back to the Future, maybe mixed with the Star Tours ride, was pretty fantastic. Also noticed this knockoff Army Man crossed with a Power Ranger. It's like the Red Ranger doing the army crawl with a rifle. When we got done shopping, I hung out in the parking lot with my buddy Nick and our friend Dave, who came up from Maryland. We chit-chatted about toys and stores that they go to, and Joe Fest and different things like that. Then eventually, Dave headed back in to do one more loop around and say goodbye to some people, and we went out to lunch with Rose and Tony from RetroCon. I did have one item that I needed to get from Tony. This was something he was able to order for me. It's the Cantina Adventure Set. This is the modern set that throws back to the vintage Kenner set with the Kenner colored figures of the modern guys. And I needed this in my collection because there's a blue Snaggletooth there. I love blue Snaggletooth. I think that the figure is interesting. My friends and I were going to make a stop-motion show called the Blue Snaggletooth Show. We actually plotted out a loose outline for episodes, and I customized some figures for it. And, we kind of had like a storyline going on, but we never did it. It was around the time we were graduating from college, and it took some time to finish up Action Figure Adventures around that time, and so we just never went into production. We never started animating the next show. But I think it would have been fun. And so anyway, I have this like soft spot for Blue Snaggletooth. So I am going to open this up and show it off to you guys. But before I do that, I got one last thing to show off in general before that review. It has nothing to do with the toy show, but just toy-related things I found down here in the basement. I was cleaning off a bookshelf, and I came across some images from when I took photography in college. And this was a depth of field assignment, and I took pictures of Beachhead battling some of the Agent Faces Crimson Guard guys. So this was class period 350, project number 7, G.I. Joe Toys in Existing Light. This was due on April 15th of 2004. I used an OM10 camera and T-Max 400 film. Enlarger filter pack E1 filter 3.5. Enlargement f-stop 8. Enlargement exposure 12 seconds. Other information, toys on desk, lit by desk lamp. So I have 2 prints of that photo, one that was mounted to be turned in, and just another print of it that I have laying here. And then I have 2 smaller prints of an alternative pose. This one has Beachhead kicking at the Crimson Guard. So maybe this was the scene before that or the scene right after that. I don't really remember how I set these up, but I took a couple different pictures, and I remember being sort of like the end of this course, and I had been pretty stingy because I was a poor college kid with my photography paper, like just kind of printing the photos I needed for assignments. And so at the end, I printed a few extras of, I think, the sign to my dorm that I had taken, a photo of my grandmother maybe, and then a couple of these G.I. Joe pictures to use up the stock of paper I had. So I probably did 2 prints for the assignment, and then used up a half sheet or a full sheet or whatever that I had left over for those 2. Just kind of fun stuff. Takes me back to those days I remember being in the dark room in college. Sorry for that little interlude. Back to the Star Wars Cantina Adventure Set. This is from the Vintage Collection. Did any of you guys get this? This is definitely old. This is not a modern review at this point. But because I got it this day that I went to the toy show, I put it with my haul to put it in this video, and it's been months. So it comes out in a tray with the carded figures in there. Each guy is individually carded. So here is Blue Snaggletooth, and it's interesting because they kind of, they mocked it up like he was a carded figure, but he wasn't. This is a blue-tinted version of the artwork they used on the Red Snaggletooth figures card, and Blue Snaggletooth only came in this adventure set as a mail-away. He was bagged. These other figures were actually carded. So here's Walrus Man, here's Greedo, Hammerhead. Back when they could sell a kid a cardboard playset. It is pretty cool. I like how there's a Stormtrooper and a moisture evaporator. There's a droid outside, and it looks like a heavily armed Jawa inside one of the buildings over here, and there's sort of like a hobo sleeping Jawa over here. And then there's footprints and tank treads and stuff on the ground. A droid and some alien feet. It's kind of fun. So Tony from RetroCon's favorite figure from the Kenner line is Hammerhead, and he is a pretty awesome figure. And the guys from Weezer back that up and say that he's the best figure in the whole line. Tony kind of army builds him when he can find him at a cheap price at shows, and that was the reason that Tony was interested in this set. So these figures have movie-accurate outfits, but Kenner-inspired coloring. So the Kenner figure, who was wearing sort of like a one-piece bathing suit and had all exposed arms and exposed legs, now has the hooded sweatshirt thing, right, with the rope belt and everything. Has all those movie-accurate details, but he's in that greenish-blue color. He does have his eyes painted a little shifty. He's looking off to the side, just like that Kenner figure, which is kind of one of his best features. And he comes with a Stormtrooper blaster because that's what his action figure came with. So there's Hammerhead. He's pretty fun. He has a soft goods waist skirt piece there. He's got big old feet, but his legs are much thicker than the vintage figure. The vintage figure had these real skinny legs and then big tree trunk feet. Next up, we'll check out Greedo. So Greedo, who wears an orange vest in the movie, this time they packaged him without that vest because the Kenner Greedo was very plain looking. They did still give him a holster, which doesn't really match the vintage figure at all. But they probably couldn't release him without him having some sort of a hole wherever that pegs onto him. It looks like he comes with the correct pistol for Greedo, and not actually like a Han Solo blaster, which would be more accurate to the Kenner figure. But he looks pretty good. I like how he's got the different shades of green on his arms and stuff. And he's got those long, spindly fingers, which is accurate. I don't know. I don't see any place where the belt pegs in. So it seems like they could have released him without the holster. Maybe they thought he'd be too plain. I don't know if he can be popped apart at the waist, because then you could just take that belt off if you didn't want that look. So the artwork on the Walrus Man's card looks more like an airbrush sketch than a photo from the movie. So that's where I'm a little confused. Maybe I've never looked very closely at a carded Walrus Man to know what the vintage art really looked like, but this just seems redone somehow. So this Walrus Man comes with an orange jacket with blue stripes down the sleeve and blue pants. Again, they're trying to make him look as close to that vintage one as possible, with that dark green skin tone and everything. He looks pretty cool. He does come with multiple accessories here. He has his Walrus Man pistol. So again, they didn't go with the most Kenner accurate accessory. He also comes with a set of optional flipper hands. So in the movie, different hands were used for Walrus Man. When you see him at the bar, he has these flipper-like hands, but the arm that's laying on the ground after he gets his hand cut off definitely is a more humanoid hand. And so a lot of times with Walrus Man figures, we've been seeing in the modern era swappable hands to give him both looks. There he is with his Walrus Man blaster. He does have that holster. And then my favorite, my boy, Blue Snaggletooth. They don't call him Blue Snaggletooth on the package. Throughout A New Hope and the holiday special, there are multiple aliens that use a mask very similar to this. There is one guy who's kind of a hunchback in the cantina scene. And then there's another guy in more of like a space jumpsuit in the holiday special. And it's hard to know who they were really looking at pictures of when they sculpted this figure. But the short red version definitely takes inspiration from the holiday special. In fact, the image on the package, now it's color changed here, but the character on the package to the actual red Snaggletooth toy is a shot from the holiday special. But this figure that they've done as the Blue Snaggletooth here is the more hunchbacked looking guy. So there's a couple of weird variations that happen there. So this guy's not as slick looking as I like Blue. I love when he's in the slick spacesuit with the silver boots. Here he does have the silver boots, but they're less like moon boots and more like just regular boots. And his outfit's much more wrinkly, and his whole body is a little bit more grotesque with like the one shoulder slumped down. But he's still fun. And of course he doesn't have his fancy belt buckle, because the belt buckle on the Snaggletooth figure was famously designed. It's like a logo from the sculptor, and he worked it into his belt buckle. And both versions of the figure have that. And he's got a little holster on the back of his belt here so he can hold a Han Solo style blaster, which is the appropriate accessory for Blue Snaggletooth and Red Snaggletooth, if you're basing them on their Kenner releases. What did you guys think of the stuff I saw at the Delaware show? What was your favorite thing from the haul? Did you pick up the Cantina Adventure set? What's going on with your collection in 2026? Let me know in the comments down below. I appreciate all you guys watching. Make sure to let YouTube know there's quality content. Subscribe if you haven't done so. If you want to support the channel further, consider joining us on Patreon. But most of all, thanks for hanging on the peg with me.